Bucko walked through Bilmo on his way home from work. He followed a different route, avoiding the residential area and through a remote forest in order to avoid the tall man. The tree stood tall, below him was bumpy and wet. The night wind blew hard, chilling him, and it was raining heavily, soaking his work clothes. He groaned as he knew his clothes needed washing now, and the wetness from the rain was giving him a cold. He sneezed rather loudly, thinking nothing much of it, but as he did this, he heard a ruffle come from within one of the bushes in front of him. He paused for a moment, staring. He shook it off as some sort of wild animal and continued to walk home. The passage he walked down grew narrow, and the trees surrounding him were even taller and more dense. He could hardly see what was in front of him, only the night sky and moonlight above him, with the occasional lightning and thunder to scare him. He took out his mobile phone and turned on the torch app. As he did this, the sight of a man's right leg quickly stepped back into some bushes in front of him. This time Bucko knew that this was no squirrel, rat or hedgehog, but a man, possibly the tall man, approaching him in the darkness. It was just him and whoever or whatever this other person was, alone in the dark, inside a remote forest in Bilmo. Precise to say, Bucko was petrified and shaking in fear. Bucko gulped and looked around slowly, trying not to raise any suspicion. He noticed streetlights shining through the forest sky in front of him. Bucko took a deep breath and began to casually walk towards town again, but as he did this, he heard the other man step out of the woods behind him. Bucko slowly turned his head to one side and was horrified to witness the tall man standing directly behind him, with his big smile, sharp teeth, and creepily long limbs. The tall man laughed in a deep demonic tone and reached out to grab Bucko. Bucko screamed and ran through the forest and towards the streetlights. Branches and roots on the ground stuck out haphazardly, and Bucko kept falling and crashing right in front of them, scraping his face, ripping his clothes, falling into the wet mud below him, and cutting his arms. But he just kept sprinting and sprinting, even after he ran out of breath. Bucko just pushed himself further, to the point where he felt like his head was about to burst. His adrenaline kicked in, and he somehow managed to outrun this mysterious being. He eventually made it into town and crashed on the street, lying on the wet tarmac in tears, but relieved to be alive. Eventually Bucko got to his feet and slowly made his way through town, thinking he was safe, but the truth was far from it, as he did not know that the tall man was stalking him from above. It was only until he heard a loud thud behind him that he looked and seen the monster rise from the ground, its big arms reaching out high above him, and its hideous face rising to grin at him, showing its shark-like teeth. It licked its teeth with its long, red, giraffe-like tongue. It had a hunger in its eyes that made Bucko panic and run off sprinting again. The thing laughed an evil howl and chased after him like an eagle after prey. It rained hard and hit Bucko's face like lashes from a whip. He ran so fast everything was a blur, and his eyes filled with hot tears. He could almost feel the thing behind him getting closer and closer with every second. "For God's sake, piss off!" Bucko screamed as he ran through Bilmo. Eventually, he came across a narrow street. He looked behind him quickly and noticed that the tall man was out of sight. He quickly ducked into an alleyway and watched as the man ran past him again. Jesus Christ, that was close, Bucko breathed. He was exhausted and stressed. He saw something bright and looked. It was the Wygayet pub, the place he had visited on his arrival to Bilmo. He looked both ways before crossing the street to make sure the tall man wasn't around, and made his way into the pub for a drink that he really needed.